told her to be quiet about her desires, to hide her fire, to dim her light. For years, she believed that being wanted was dangerous and being expressive was shameful. But what if I told you that everything you've ever misunderstood about female sexuality isn't just hurting your connection with her, it's silencing the most powerful part of who she truly is. This isn't just about sex. This is about freedom, about healing, about finally listening to the language her body has been whispering for years. They say mystery is a woman's strongest veil, and yet within that veil lies a world too often misunderstood, dismissed, or silenced. Today I want to take you on a journey, not to expose, but to understand. Because the truth is, what you don't know about female sexuality isn't just a gap in knowledge, it's a barrier to deeper connection, to real intimacy, and to authentic respect. Female sexuality is not a switch that turns on with a look or a word. It's not performative. It's not just physical. It's emotional, spiritual, psychological. It starts in the mind before it reaches the body. For a woman, feeling desired isn't about words thrown in lust. It's about presence. It's about emotional safety. It's about knowing she can be her most vulnerable self and not be judged, mocked, or discarded. You see, women are wired differently. And that's not a weakness, it's a design. A woman's desire often builds in silence, in subtlety, in energy. She may not always say what she wants, but she will always show it through her responses, her tones, her shifts in mood. The problem is, most aren't taught to look beyond the surface. Most men are chasing visuals. But female sexuality, it's layered in emotion, in context, in feeling seen. Let's talk about arousal. For many women, it's not instantaneous. It's not transactional. It's not as simple as touch me here and I'll respond. It's relational. It's about feeling connected, respected, nurtured. You can't separate who she is outside the bedroom from who she becomes within it. If she feels unheard, unseen, unloved throughout the day, don't expect her to bloom in the dark. She's not a switch. She's a story. What you don't know is that shame has long been stitched into the fabric of female sexuality. From a young age, many women are taught to hide, suppress, fear their desires. They're called names for wanting pleasure. They're judged for exploring it. So when she hesitates, when she seems distant, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's programming. Sometimes it's just her unlearning the lies she was told about her own body. But here's the beautiful truth. When a woman feels truly safe, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, she becomes fire. Not because you unlocked her, but because she finally felt free enough to unlock herself. Female sexuality is not about what you do to her. It's about what she feels within herself with you. And when a woman trusts you enough to bring her full self to the table, that's not just pleasure, that's power. There's another secret. Most women crave more than just orgasms. They crave presence. They want you there. Mind, body, and soul. They can sense when you're going through the motions. They can feel when your touch is empty, your kiss is rushed, your mind is elsewhere. And nothing kills intimacy faster than disconnection masked by action. Female sexuality doesn't bloom in pressure. It blossoms in presence. And yet, we've turned sex into performance. We've taught men to conquer, not to connect, to focus on outcomes instead of experience. But what if you slowed down? What if you listened? What if you stopped asking, "Did you come?" and started asking, "How did that make you feel?" You'd begin to unlock a world you never knew existed. She doesn't just want to be touched, she wants to be felt. She doesn't just want to be taken, she wants to be understood. She doesn't just want release, she wants resonance. And once you realize that, once you treat her body like a temple, not a task, you won't just change her experience, you'll elevate your own. Because when a woman feels seen, safe, and sacred, She doesn't just give her body, she gives you her world. Female sexuality is not something you can decode by observation alone. It's not a formula, not a linear process, and definitely not something that fits neatly into boxes of arousal and climax. It is complex, intuitive, and deeply rooted in how a woman feels about herself and the person she's with. What many fail to understand is that for a woman, her sexuality is not activated by sight. It's awakened by presence, by energy, by emotional connection. You can't rush it, demand it, or trick it into appearing. It responds not to pressure, but to patience. Not to performance, but to presence. You see, for a woman to feel safe enough to explore her desire, she must first feel emotionally held. That safety is not just about physical boundaries being respected. It's about her spirit feeling honored. If she senses manipulation, insincerity, or pressure, her body may comply, but her soul will close off. That disconnect is why so many women report feeling unseen or emotionally unfulfilled, even in relationships that appear physically intimate on the outside. Most men are conditioned to focus on the visual, the external cues, the physical reactions, the obvious signs of interest. But female sexuality often lives in the subtle spaces. It reveals itself in softness, in trust, in the unspoken moments where she allows herself to let go. And that level of openness is not given to everyone. It's earned through consistency, through gentleness, through being emotionally available in the spaces outside the bedroom. If a woman doesn't feel heard when she speaks, if she doesn't feel supported when she's vulnerable, then don't be surprised if she begins to retreat in ways that go unnoticed until the intimacy feels empty. Her sexuality is not compartmentalized, it's woven into everything. Her body is a map of stories, memories, and feelings, and if you're not tuned into those, you're not truly connecting with her. What also goes unnoticed is how much conditioning many women carry when it comes to their sexuality. Society has told her for years that being too sexual makes her less respectable, that being expressive makes her dangerous, that being open about her needs makes her demanding or hard to please. So even when she wants to speak, shame often silences her. Even when she's curious, fear holds her back. That's why some women struggle to articulate what they enjoy or to initiate what they desire. It's not because they don't know, but because they've been taught that their pleasure is secondary. The truth is, many women have had to learn to disconnect from their bodies just to survive a world that either objectifies them or judges them. Reclaiming that connection takes time, and it takes a partner who understands that the goal is not to fix her, but to walk beside her as she remembers how powerful and worthy she already is. When a woman feels emotionally safe and genuinely seen, she begins to awaken in ways that are both tender and fierce. Her pleasure becomes a reflection of how deeply she's allowed herself to trust, to surrender, to open. That kind of connection is not transactional, it's sacred. And when it's nurtured with respect, it deepens beyond what any physical act can create. The secret that most overlook is this: you can't separate her emotional world from her sexual expression. If you want to understand her body, you must first understand her heart. If you want to explore her pleasure, you must first learn how to protect her peace. Because, for her, the body follows where the heart feels safe enough to go. And when the heart feels neglected or misunderstood, no amount of desire can bring her fully into the moment. Female arousal is a process that begins long before any physical touch. It starts in the mind, often ignited by emotional connection, meaningful conversation, and the feeling of being valued beyond just the body. A woman's desire is rarely spontaneous in the way it's often portrayed. It's not about heat and urgency alone. It's about context, timing, energy, and the emotional temperature of her surrounding. If she's stressed, overwhelmed, unheard, or emotionally disconnected, her desire will likely stay dormant, no matter how much physical affection is offered. It's not that she doesn't want to be close, it's that her system can't open under emotional tension. You can't pour love into a cup that's already full of pressure, resentment, or unspoken words. Many women carry emotional weight that their partners can't see, and this hidden burden can silently suppress their sexuality without them even realizing it. There is also an unspoken expectation placed on women to respond a certain way, to perform pleasure, to act aroused even when they're not. This pressure to please, to satisfy, to maintain harmony often disconnects women from their own needs. They become givers by habit, not always by choice. Over time, this erodes their ability to listen to their own bodies. They may start engaging in intimacy not out of desire, but out of duty. This leads to a silent resentment, a sense that their needs are invisible, their boundaries negotiable, and their voices quieted. The truth is, arousal dies where authenticity cannot live. If she doesn't feel she has permission to express her truth without judgment, her body will begin to shut down as a form of protection. This is not dysfunction, this is wisdom. Emotional attunement is one of the most underrated elements of female arousal. When she feels that her partner truly gets her, not just listens to her words, but understands her moods, her silences, her shifts in energy, that deep sense of being emotionally understood opens a pathway to trust. And when trust enters the room, desire has space to breathe. It's in the little things, how you speak to her when no one's watching, how you respond to her frustrations, how you notice when she's tired or withdrawn. These aren't just relationship details, they're part of her sexual landscape. Because for a woman, the moments leading up to intimacy often matter more than the act itself. The whole day becomes foreplay when the relationship is emotionally rich. A kind gesture, a thoughtful act, a deep conversation, these can spark arousal more deeply than any physical touch. A woman also needs to feel that her needs matter, not just physically, but emotionally. She needs to feel that she is not expected to always be on, not required to be the constant caretaker, the emotional support system, the one who holds everyone together. When she feels emotionally exhausted, her desire often goes into hiding, not because she doesn't care about her partner, but because there is nothing left to give. In those moments, the best thing a partner can do is not to ask for more, but to give more. Not in performance, but in presence, in stillness, in noticing, in offering her space to exhale without expectation. What is most often misunderstood is that female arousal is not about what is done to her, but about what is stirred within her. She must feel safe enough to explore, curious enough to unfold, and free enough to express without fear of being judged or rejected. That freedom is not given through words alone. It is felt through emotional consistency. When she feels emotionally held, her body softens. When she feels emotionally respected, her desire awakens. When she feels emotionally seen, she becomes capable of giving and receiving in ways that are deeply intimate, wildly passionate, and profoundly real. From an early age, many women are taught that their sexuality is something to be hidden, controlled, or even feared. Whether through culture, religion, media, or upbringing, the message is often the same. A woman who is too expressive with her desires is dangerous, shameful, or unworthy. This programming runs deep. It creates a silent barrier between a woman and her own body, forcing her to second-guess her feelings, suppress her curiosity, and view her pleasure as something that exists to serve others instead of being a birthright. Even as she matures, this internal conflict doesn't just disappear, it lingers in her thoughts, in her choices, in the way she shows up, or doesn't, in intimate moments. Her sexuality, rather than being a source of power and joy, becomes a space of confusion and guilt. This internalized shame doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it shows up as a lack of interest in intimacy. Sometimes it appears as overperformance, doing what she thinks she's supposed to do rather than what she genuinely desires. It can look like silence, like agreeing to things that don't feel good, or pretending not to care about what deeply matters. Many women have learned to smile through discomfort, to prioritize their partner's pleasure while disconnecting from their own need. Not because they are weak, but because they were never given the freedom to believe that their voice matters in the bedroom. The cost of this is profound. It creates distance, it creates resentment, and most importantly, it creates a loss of self. One of the deepest secrets of female sexuality is that reclaiming it isn't just about sex, it's about healing. It's about unlearning the narratives that told her she was too much or not enough. It's about stepping into her body with pride instead of apology. It's about recognizing that her pleasure is not selfish. It is not shameful. It is sacred. This healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey that requires patience, self-compassion, and often the presence of a partner who understands that this process cannot be rushed or demanded. True intimacy begins when a woman feels that her boundaries will be honored, her no will be respected, and her yes will be celebrated without pressure or performance. For many women, desire returns when they feel emotionally empowered, when they realize they don't have to fit into a mold, when they are seen not just as sexual beings, but as whole human beings, when they are allowed to express without fear of labels. That's when she begins to connect with her body again. That's when touch feels nourishing, not obligatory. That's when intimacy feels safe, not scripted. A woman's sexual liberation is not loud or wild unless she wants it to be. Sometimes it's in the quiet knowing that she owns her body and her choices, that she doesn't have to be performative to be pleasing, that she can say what she wants, how she wants it, and trust that her voice won't be silenced by shame or ignored out of ego. It is also essential to understand that every woman's healing looks different. Some may need time. Others may need conversation. Some may rediscover themselves through therapy, through solitude, through creative expression, or through safe, intentional intimacy. The key is that she must lead the process, not be pulled into it, not be pushed past her edges, but gently guided back to herself. And when she does arrive, when she finally reconnects with the sacred power of her own pleasure, what emerges is not just a more sexually expressive woman. What emerges is a woman who is fully alive, unapologetically whole, and deeply rooted in her truth. There is a powerful yet often misunderstood truth about female sexuality that rarely gets spoken. It is deeply connected to emotional safety, but it also thrives on freedom. Freedom from judgment, freedom from pressure, freedom to explore and evolve. A woman cannot be truly open in intimacy if she feels boxed in, controlled, or constantly expected to perform a certain way. She needs space to breathe, to shift, to unfold at her own pace. Her sensuality is not a constant, it is a wave, an energy that flows differently depending on how she feels about herself and the environment she's in. When she is given the space to simply be, without needing to justify or explain her mood, her desire, or her needs, she begins to trust herself more deeply. And when she trusts herself, her sexuality expands in ways that are far more authentic than anything that can be manufactured through pressure or expectation. There is this misconception that women lose interest in sex simply because of age, routine, or stress. While those factors do contribute, what's often overlooked is the role of emotional restriction. When a woman is not allowed to evolve in her sensuality, when she is told to be the same version of herself over and over again, something within her begins to shut down. Her desire becomes quieter, not because it's gone, but because it no longer feels safe to speak. A woman's sexuality is a living, breathing energy. It changes with her, it grows with her, it deepens when she feels accepted in her shifts. If she is met with resistance every time she tries to explore new expressions of herself, she will start to withdraw emotionally and eventually physically. Not out of coldness, but out of quiet protection. Her withdrawal is not rejection. It is her nervous system trying to keep her safe from judgment or misunderstanding. True intimacy with a woman is not about unlocking a part of her that's hidden. It's about walking beside her as she discovers more of herself. It's about being a witness, not a manager, a supporter, not a controller, a woman who feels she has the permission to be soft, wild, curious, quiet, loud, passionate, or still, without having to apologize for any of it, will naturally open in ways that are magnetic and real. Her body will no longer be guarded. Her touch will no longer feel disconnected. Her energy will no longer feel forced. She will offer herself not as a performance, but as a presence. But this cannot happen in an environment where she feels watched instead of seen, measured instead of met, expected instead of embraced. Another piece that rarely gets acknowledged is that many women suppress their sexual energy not because they are shy or broken, but because they don't feel emotionally prioritized. If she constantly has to initiate deep conversations, remind her partner of emotional needs, or carry the weight of emotional labor in the relationship, it affects her desire profoundly. She begins to feel like the giver of everything and the receiver of nothing. And from that place, desire becomes something that drains her instead of something that feeds her. Restoring that balance doesn't begin in the bedroom. It begins in how she is valued outside of it. Does she feel emotionally supported? Does she feel intellectually engaged? Does she feel like her presence matters? Or is she just there to fulfill a role? These are the questions that shape the foundation of her sexual expression far more than technique ever will. It's also important to know that a woman's sexuality is not just about physical pleasure. It's about embodiment. It's about how connected she feels to her own body, how much she trusts herself to express, and how often she is allowed to just feel without interruption. Her desire is not always loud, it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's in the way she leans closer when she feels heard. Sometimes it's in the way she looks at you when her soul feels safe. Sometimes it's in her silence, in the way she lingers, in the energy she carries when she knows she is free to be herself without fear. So if you truly want to understand female sexuality, don't chase it. Hold space for it. Be patient enough to listen without assuming, present enough to feel without forcing, and wise enough to honor without trying to fix. Because when a woman feels safe, seen, and free, she doesn't just open her body, she reveals her soul. And in that space, real intimacy is not only possible, it becomes unforgettable.